Hey there, internets. So Saturday Night Rant time. I have done these unscripted. I finally made some notes in advance to make sure I cover everything. I try and do these in one take. And I'm going to have some links in the description below, especially because this is just kind of some things in the news and then something I brought up on a short earlier in the week. So, which is the main thing I want to talk about. But the first item right off the top is the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband. So like anybody, I'm going to condemn this. Shouldn't be hard to figure out, but there are some people in our society who don't think they need to do it at times. Any kind of violence doesn't work. Little clue here for anybody that's thinking that, oh, you want to start a revolution or take somebody out. It's generally not going to end up going well for you or for your cause. Of course, everyone's focusing on part of his views, especially the mass media, about how he bought into a lot of 2020 theories about the election. He bought into COVID theories, some of the crazier child fans of the playground, as I think Sidney Watson likes to refer to them, being in government and all these different things. This guy had a mix of views. Yes, he had some views that sounded very right-wing. He also happened to be registered to vote, according to what was originally San Francisco Chronicle. I did find a version on Yahoo, because I didn't want to go to it was behind a paywall, that he was a Green Party member. Green Party is kind of a bunch of Democrats in need of a reality check, because most of your third parties kind of are. Everybody that wants a third party, either they are a Democrat in need of a reality check, which is generally your Greens and your socialist workers and that sort of thing, or they're a Republican in need of a reality check, a Constitution Party, a lot of libertarian types, also in need of a reality check, or they want some weird custom mix of views from both parties that sometimes doesn't make any sense. He was a nudity activist. He made hemp jewelry. This doesn't sound like a right-winger to me. At the same time, he had some views typically associated with that. So let's just chalk him up to being crazy. But where are the Democrats when the violence goes the other way? When Rand Paul was attacked a couple years a while later, Nancy Pelosi's daughter's like, the neighbor was right. How often do we see when a conservative just dies of natural causes? When I was running acting as the only admin for the Skagit County Republicans, I deleted posts about people saying, when Margaret Thatcher died, I remember one coming up as ding dong, the witch is dead type stuff. They're nowhere to be seen. They'll celebrate such things happening. Where were they in 2017 when the congressional baseball game Republicans were practicing, got shot at? One of them almost died. Rep. Scalise, I believe his name it was. Where were they? Oh, they were saying, oh, maybe now you'll do something about guns, or celebrating it. They weren't condemning it. Where were they when the guy wanted to kidnap Justice Alito? Oh, that's right. They excused it. When the Florida, one of the DeSantis volunteers got beat up a couple weeks in the last week, they justified it, saying, oh, he's a Nazi. And apparently the pictures don't even match him to the supposed white supremacist. And they're justifying it. The whole summer of love in 2020, when people were trying to light federal buildings on fire, where were the Democrats on that? They were trying to say, oh, it's peaceful protest. It's mostly peaceful. Take a video of a bunch of women out there with their hands up chanting, our hands are up, please don't shoot us. They take off, and then as soon as the sun goes down, they're lighting up the Molotov cocktails. Where were they for Timcast getting swatted? I don't think they've hit 10 times yet, but they've hit 5 or 6, including a credible threat, which resulted in the Chaircast broadcast where they had to leave their cameras rolling, and for 2.5 hours, people saw empty chairs. Or the quartering getting swatted the same night or the very next night. Or Marjorie Taylor Greene's been swatted 5 or 6 times. Where were they? Where are they? Just come out and say, this is unacceptable. They're nowhere to be heard. So you don't find a problem with people on the right condemning it. You do have a problem with getting the people on the left to condemn it if it appears to go the other way. Flat out. Now the next thing is Elon Musk bought Twitter, and a lot of people, of course, saw him taking the sink in and into the Twitter headquarters, and then he fired a bunch of people right off. And people said, "Oh, this is so scary for our democracy." Well, number one, most of your corporate takeovers, having been the employee at the bottom of the corporate food chain, the most of your Eagle Hardware executives were gone after a year or two, or very shortly thereafter. They were gone real quick. That's normal. Sometimes they go on their own. Sometimes I think there was one executive that stuck around for a few years until they restructured it. Being a Southern company, all the non-Southern executives were gone. Every one of us saw that. But that's normal. But then he fires the worst offenders, including the legal officer legal executive who sat there with Tim Pool saying, I'd have to see an example of our bias. Gives him an example. Well, I'd have to know the context, so we'd have to have an example. And with a circular thing, where she was very proud of the fact that they censored. They were saying, oh, well, one guy shouldn't be able to own a platform. What's the problem then with Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post? Why is that not a problem for you? Oh, that's right. He's a liberal. There was a person that said, oh, well, I'll be on Twitter because as long as I heard it being read, I think it was on Tim Pool, reading this tweet says, I'll be on Twitter until they kick me off. And somebody said, what makes you think you get kicked off? Well, that's what happens, or that's how it works. It's confession through projection. They say, oh, we're not being censored. We're not being censored. We're not censoring you. We're not censoring you. Yes, they are. I can show you. If just watching the analytics of my videos the last few weeks, it just plummeted. Granted, I haven't gotten much traction anyway. But there are some videos where I had, like, for 15 subscribers, like 5,400 impressions. And then I do some videos closer to the election and some about Second Amendment issues, and it starts dropping off. Only 200 impressions and even fewer. Absolutely, it happens. So it's absolutely some confession through projection about whether they censor, whether they shadow ban, whether they suppress views. It's well known that all these tech companies do it. What Democrats don't like is that they're not going to be able to do it with Twitter. So, we've kept getting told, well, if you don't like it, build your own Twitter. Well, somebody just bought Twitter. What's wrong with that? I have to think about that. So, that's kind of the big news stories of the week, and of course they happened at the end of the week. But something a little longer, and what I want to bring up with is far-right extreme radical feminists, FRERFs. And if you can go with a better acronym that's more pronounceable, put it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. I was talking with a friend the other day, and I made the short about it, and earlier in the week, and listen, I'll read the text as I put it into my notes here, because we had this watch party for Matt Walsh's What Is a Woman, and I made the comment that my pronouns are master and master self, and we were joking about that, and one of my friends decides that their pronouns are goddess self. That friend is a female. So, I've said, hey, if the left can create these goofball neo-pronouns, so can we. And we can expect the left to have to do it and tell the left they have to call us by our own made-up pronouns because that's their rules. So I expect the left to refer to me as master, master self. My friend says, goddess, goddess self. And she brings this up because it just says, I was just thinking, if you disagree with the whole left woke agenda, you are considered a far-right extremist. Pause here for a minute. There's absolutely truth to that. Tim Pool is not, I think he's drifting to the right, but he is not a conservative. He is not pro-life. He's an absolutist on the gun issue, but he doesn't favor a low tax system. He wants to tax the crap out of the rich. He still says he favors universal health care, even if he will list off all the reasons it doesn't work. He is very much anti-war. I'm kind of in between the neocons and the Ron Paul type libertarians. I think they're both wrong, and the hate America left is wrong. But they keep calling him right wing. They've called Ian Crossland right wing, and it's like, no. Have you ever watched that show, Timcast IRL? He is not a conservative. I'm trying to call him a conservative. Seamus Coughlin is a conservative. Absolutely. He'll even call himself a conservative. Okay? But just by not buying into the extreme identitarianism, the goofball stuff, you're now a far-right extremist. And then if you don't believe, she continues on, if you don't believe a trans woman is a woman, you are a TERF. She says exclusive, but she's exclusionary. Trans-exclusive radical feminist. That means I'm a far-right extreme radical feminist. She puts the thinking emoji, and she says, how does that work? And she had another emoji there. I said, and I thought about saying different things. I just said, welcome to the dark side. It's the best thing I could say. And we messaged back and forth. And so I got to remember to use her proper pronouns. You know, that's the left's rules. We're all supposed to respect pronouns. So use goddess's pronouns. And goddess did not become far right overnight. I would even argue that goddess is not an extremist, because goddess is to the left of me. I am kind of the full range of conservative, and I'll be getting to something else here about this whole thing with regard to that, because I may not like Trump. I want Ron DeSantis or Ted Cruz or Greg Abbott. Those are my top three. I'm not going to do a Bill Kristol and start running around endorsing a bunch of Democrats. As I've said, in the 39th District legislative race here in Washington, I'm very bothered by Sam Loeb, talking about how he's a moderate. That's not something to brag about, because I don't believe in middle-of-the-road politics. And that's to say, I'm just trying to go the middle of the road. That just means you're going to get run over by the cars in both lanes. I fall in between the neocons and some of the non-interference types because I think they're both very short-sighted. Not because I'm trying to split the difference. No, our foreign policy should meet American interest. That does not mean we have to get involved in every conflict where two countries are fighting or two armed groups are fighting. Sometimes the best thing for the United States is just say, we're just going to stay out of this one because there's no strategic interest. Libya being an example. We didn't even know who we were helping. Okay, so what's her evolution? Is she conservative? Well, I think a lot of people are more conservative than one would think. I made the joke once to Goddess when Goddess was telling me how Goddess thought a lot of the kids were getting, as she put it, pussified and being wimps. And I said, friend, I don't want to call her out and put her name on it and have her associated with my politics. You're starting to sound like a Republican. And she hissed at me like a cat, like an angry cat. I don't think Goddess is all behind supply side economics or Austrian economics, which is probably better than supply side. Because supply side is just Keynesians with low taxes. Goddess isn't fully on board with the pro-life thing. We were having a discussion, and I don't think she's as far as the extreme left of the Democrats, but Goddess is not to the Republican route either. Goddess evolved. Goddess was very afraid when Trump became president that the whole world was going to blow up. I was convinced the night that he was elected that a civil conflict was going to become unavoidable after that. And I thought that when I finally came to that conclusion in 2016, I was on my way to the election night party, and I thought Trump was going to lose. I had some other plans. Actually, I think it was hanging out with Goddess, doing something, so I didn't have to think about the election. But Goddess started, I found out later, storing a little extra food. Goddess independently started listening to the same alternative media like Tim Pool. And when the January 6th dust-up happened, the riot, Goddess was more defending of some of the people who were there than I initially was, even now, saying they were set up and played for fools. Not that Goddess thinks it was justified or that they were justified or it was one big conspiracy, but this friend of mine over time has had Goddess's eyes opened. I'm going to keep using the funny pronoun just for the humor of it, but she's changed her views didn't change because of Trump, but things intervening brought about stuff. My wife, her evolution toward more conservative views was largely because she met me. Okay. But there's people who abandoned or betrayed their principles. I know people that were Republican where they before were seemed more free trade. There's the two Pacific trade agreements, and one of them they were trying to do all in secret, and most of us, that was the key to me to saying that's not a good agreement if you can't tell us what you're voting on. They couldn't even go in and read it without signing a thing saying they wouldn't talk about what was in it. I don't think it passed. I think Trump put the kibosh on that one. But there's other people. I have a friend. She's Mormon. She might, if she views this, might figure out that it's her. Was on my list of volunteers that I had among Republicans. People had given the Republican Party their contact information here in Skagit County. Pro-life, as far as I knew. Against gay marriage, as far as I knew. She wasn't the biggest gun person, but largely pro-gun. But she had some issues with any kind of weapons. She'd had some things go on in her life, or certain things. We were doing a martial arts thing, and I was told that somebody had just a rubber knife, and it made her freak out by that. Even the idea of learning knife defenses with a rubber knife, thing could be bent around, made her freak out. But she was very, very Republican. Because of Trump, 180-degree turn, and now there's no restriction on abortion that is acceptable. She won't say it, she'll deny it, but she is for abortion up to the moment of birth. She has completely changed her views because of Trump. And I've seen it in other people. More famously, we saw it with Liz Cheney, particularly after she decided to side with impeaching him and then the January 6th stuff. Liz Cheney is running around endorsing Democrats. She isn't just simply selectively endorsing certain Republicans that maybe aren't totally on board with Trump but still espouse Republican views. No, she's running around and outright and just staying silent. I mean, I'll just say I did not vote for a Democrat in 2020 or 2016, but there was nothing I could be proud to vote for on the ballot otherwise. No, she's running around endorsing Democrats. Okay. Bill Kristol, running around endorsing Democrats, which tells me that other than the neocon views of foreign policy, which are rapidly becoming the Democratic Party's views of foreign policy, he has no principles, or he has betrayed them over that guy. And so now, we've all seen the meme that Elon Musk posted where it says, one of them showed a guy saying, who radicalized you, dude? He says, I'm just a regular guy from 5 years ago or from 10 years ago. The Democratic Party's gone on this long left turn, and most Republicans are still right where they were. That's why I couldn't ever be never Trump. He literally came over to the positions that Ted Cruz was already holding. It wasn't Ted Cruz went over to Trump. Trump went over to Ted Cruz. Okay? That's why I could not be a never Trumper either. Because I wasn't going to throw myself in with people like Hillary Clinton. I wasn't going to sit there and decide it's better that Hillary Clinton, and granted, in Washington, thanks to the wisdom of the founders in the Electoral College, I had the benefit of my vote really not mattering, because if Washington was in play, Trump was going to win anyway. But the Democratic Party has gone way to the left, and tip before that, the Democratic Party was maybe just a little to the left of the average conservative in Europe, and they've gone beyond conservative liberals in Europe now, and they think that if you don't move with them, you're on the wrong side. They think they're in the middle, and they're not. I mean, half their party thinks it's okay to have child sex change operations. I gotta wonder, does this one friend of mine who was Republican, does she think that's okay now? Give kids hormones that can do irreversible changes to their bodies? I know my friend whose pronouns are goddess self doesn't. She's not with that. And so we now have FRERFs, far-right extreme radical feminists. Because Goddess is not going to say a trans woman is a woman when that trans woman still has the male bits, most especially. That Goddess is not going to accept the idea of giving those things to teenagers. Goddess is a mother. Goddess is actually a grandmother. Goddess knows how dumb teenagers can be. I haven't had kids. I look at back where I was at 18. I didn't make any decisions that dumb. I'm trying to have kids now, but I made some not so good decisions at times. Okay? Because she's not going to accept that a person just says they're a woman so they can be in women's sports. There was a video I ended up seeing on a channel called Liberal Hive Mind. Male volleyball player identifying as a woman, so he gets to play on the girls' team. Runs up to it and spikes this volleyball down. I didn't think something like that would cause that much injury. Caught the other team's player in the face, put her clear onto her back, and she's got whiplash and a concussion. But that makes her, one, a far-right extremist for opposing it, and it makes her a TERF for not accepting that is a woman. And I never realized how crazy it was. I thought it was crazy. I didn't think it could possibly become mainstream in 2018 when they had their second Women's March And a friend of mine who's way to the left shared this thing about how they need to leave their pink hats at home because some women don't have vaginas. I'm like, no. Women do not have penises. But they're insisting that women have penises. I'm like, do you guys believe every goofball idea that somebody comes up with? Apparently so. So apparently, because my friend is not going to accept every goofball idea the far left comes up with, my friend has come over to the dark side. By the way, we have cookies. So I would really like to come up with a better acronym than FRERFs, and it's not to be an insult, that is just screwing with the left. If we can come up with something even better, and I encourage all of the people that have become like that to wear that title with pride. If you're a far-right radical extreme, if you're a far-right extreme radical feminist, wear it with pride, because it means you're not crazy. If I ever got enough traction to justify merch, I could almost make a shirt out of it. So, I'm going to leave it there. That's the Saturday Night Rant. There will be links in the description once it uploads and I'm able to get to them for the news articles related to the Pelosi attack. So if you missed it and you want to go back and look to see what I was reading, you can. And until then, you all take care.